We left off with our self-assessment of, is each one of these examples forest recreation, and by proxy, are we managing toward this? All the things that are not forest and outdoor recreation across those 6 or 8 examples that we ran across on Tuesday, we're still managing for those, but we're managing against them, right? We're trying to down-regulate, we're trying to mitigate things like kind of the impacts of tourism, like we saw with whale watching and stuff like that. And so forth. So the question becomes, okay, we gotta have a pretty clear definition of what forest and outdoor recreation is relative to a bunch of things that are forest and outdoor recreation-ish, but not actually the thing. Because we're gonna be starting to get forced into some pretty hard decision-making on what do we prioritize, what do we allocate limited resources, primarily human resources, toward. We were just talking before class started about how Shawnee National Forest is like getting desperate, like hard scrabble, trying to fight against or compete against Davy Tree, MDC, Koala, everybody who's trying to hire our forestry students. We're the second biggest program in the country, and everybody is just desperate to get their hands on you guys and gals, and that's a good thing for you. It's a buyer's market, so to speak. You have some meaningful choice. But what that means when you start working for any of these private companies or public agencies is that staffing is a huge issue. So we got to be super economical about what we are required by law to provide good, safe, effective access for, and what we need to, for practical reasons or for legal reasons or whatever, regulatory reasons, kind of tolerate but not emphasize as managers and land carers, and then things that we actively have to shut down or mitigate. So this is a non-trivial set of questions, things as basic as, is this forest and outdoor rec? That carries some consequence to those seemingly obvious and sometimes funny, straightforward decisions, okay? And this is made more complex by the idea that we got all these subspecies, these sub-flavors or types of forest and outdoor recreation, right? As things get more advanced, more sophisticated, we have to understand that wildland forest recreation is genuinely a different animal in some respects. In terms of what we're doing management-wise, the tools we can use that we're legally allowed to use in wilderness, a subspecies of wildland rec, versus in urban forest recreation. A lot of work has gone on in the past kind of 15 to 20 years of setting up not really national park size, but national park quality type forest recreation opportunities for the huge majority of Americans that live in or near urban places. Yosemite is all well and good. Yellowstone, all well and good. Haleakala National Park in Hawaii, where hopefully someday we'll get to go for summer camp, is all well and good. But if 99% of the population, A, doesn't either know about it, or B, have the cash, the car, the time away from their work schedule, the fuel budget to get to it, it still matters that it exists, right? Existential value is a thing, but practically speaking, it doesn't exist for literally hundreds of millions of people if they can't get to it. So we got to understand there's some meaningful differences between wildland and urban rec, and that makes sense, right? What's the difference between adventure recreation, which would be like a 2, 3, 4 week trip, a 6-month trip, like hiking the Appalachian Trail or kayaking around the southern tip of Greenland, which the guy who runs Shawnee Trails has done once or a couple of times, like paddling around polar bears as they're floating by on shrinking icebergs and stuff like that, like legitimate adventure recreation, high adventure rec, instead of kind of a more sedate family camping trip. We manage that differently because the needs are different. The motivation is different versus going on an urban forest rec trip with your mountain bike in downtown Portland, Oregon to go hit what's called a mountain bike pump track, a short, high-speed track with lots of technical features, lots of high lines and rails to ride, lots of swoopy stuff in a relatively small space the size of like the ag parking lot. That could be a really, really good, like middle of the day lunch break kind of break for somebody who lives and works in a major city, and that's what they can easily access. that means something. But we manage that really pretty completely differently than the Yosemite high country, the 99% of Yosemite that 99% of visitors to Yosemite don't really access. There's this huge unevenness, this huge, not miss or bad distribution, but difference in distribution of people concentrating on what is available easily and cheaply and so forth. We also these days, especially with the invention of bullet cameras, sport and action cameras like GoPros, and increasingly with the 60 frames per second 4K camera on your iPhone or Android equivalent, so-called flagship phones, capturing a sick edit or a fire mixtape of your forest and outdoor recreation to post on social media and give a lot of other people the idea to do the same thing. That has really, really, really changed what and how we manage in terms of the people side of forests. Huge changes in the past 10 to 15 years. I mean, tectonic shifts in where people are going. These videos are now geotagged automatically in most cases. So if you find a sweet honey hole for fishing or for swimming hole jumping or rock climbing or whatever, and you post a video of that online, a lot of these services can locate that on a map automatically for you, and now everybody who sees that has access to that information in a way that has never been possible before. That by itself, geotagging videos and photos of forest and outdoor rec stuff, has completely blown up certain sites to the point that they have to be closed off from access. Just a couple of days ago, out west, there's a major wild space area that's undergoing what's called a super bloom. So every 5, 10, 20 years, the climatic conditions and the seed regeneration cycles overlap in typically more dry or semi-dry, arid type desert environments, where you get big seed bed or seed bank, and then a whole bunch of late winter, early spring monsoon rains, and all of the flowers that have been sitting latent for 5, 10, 20 years, they all bloom at once. And they all get pollinated, hopefully, and they all drop their seeds for the next big super bloom. It's kind of the life cycle. Pretty cool stuff. Some arid plants like the ahinahina, the silver sorrel, which we'll learn more about, that will send up one reproductive stalk every 5 to 15 years, and then the plant dies afterwards. Or if it survives forward, it will not typically send up another reproductive stalk. And if anything happens, if anything goes wrong to this relatively fragile plant, it's kind of like a mini yucca with fuzzy leaves instead of sharp pointed leaves. If anything goes wrong, if they get trampled in that 15-year inter-reproductive delay, this one doesn't get to participate. And so these die back very, very commonly when there's a super bloom happening. Well, that's happening in some places in the out west right now. As you know, there's a mega drought going on. And as you know, within that mega drought, some specific spots have been receiving historic rains, triggering one of these super blooms. And one city just voted to close off public access to one of these wildflower sites because of terrible Instagram influencers who want to get their, duck lips selfies laying in this bed of wildflowers that only comes around once every 10, 15, 25 years. It's a pretty cool thing, but it only takes a couple of influencers to completely destroy that wildflower bloom before the pollinators can get to it. And now nobody gets that particular area because there won't be any more seed bank for the next super bloom conditions, okay? So, photos, videos, geotagging, all this stuff is changing along with millions and millions and millions of marketing dollars from companies like Red Bull, which associate their brand with adrenaline recreation, it changes, it pressurizes, it speeds up the management needs, not necessarily also increasing the management capacity to respond to stuff like this. So think about how many videos you've ever seen that were known or most likely unknown to you, sponsored by Red Bull. You see a lot of big drop mountain bike racing events, stuff like that. So sporting events that look like forest and outdoor recreation, but are organized, professionally run events where they get all kinds of high-speed drone photography and videography going on, and then you just get the 30-second Danny McCaskill bunny hopping his mountain bike across like skyscraper crenellations and stuff, and it's all sponsored by Red Bull, and everybody drinks more Red Bull. The reason that they spend tens to hundreds of millions of dollars on this tiny section of forest and outdoor recreation each year is because it works, right? If you spend 10 million, you get people buying 20 million bucks worth of Red Bull because it's associated with that lifestyle. Marketing works. It works very, very well. And also, we need to keep in mind that some folks are using forest and outdoor recreation places like Touch of Nature, right in our backyard, as therapeutic recreation sites. They're using it professionally to help people recover from combat PTSD or complex PTSD as a function of traumatic childhood relationships or bad parenting or something like that. A lot of at-risk youth programs would fall under the idea of therapeutic forest and outdoor recreation, where the guide leading your group of 10, 15 at-risk or troubled youths or whatever is both pretty good at backpacking and pretty good at mentoring and leadership and like parenting in some ways, teaching good life skills. And none of these are really accounted for well in the original legislation that created the Park Service or the Forest Service or Fish and Wildlife or Army Corps of Engineers, certainly, and so forth. But all of these agencies are handling, they are accepting to some extent what they can about each of these and having to reject other kinds of it. So sometimes your job as a park ranger is to say no to some cool ideas. It would be pretty sick to get Danny McCaskill doing some, like, jumping his mountain bike, especially modified mountain bike, off of, the rocks at Garden of the Gods and, like, doing a half gainer, double flip, twist, and landing it on the Shawnee. That would be cool, but bicycles not allowed in wilderness, and like 1 foot past the cliff line of the rocks at Garden of the Gods, designated federal wilderness. But the pressure is there. Like, that would be a really cool thing. That would bring a bunch of dollars into Southern Illinois in terms of bringing in the filming crews, and they tend to do these big sponsored events around capturing that footage and stuff like that to sort of build up the hype machine and stuff like that, because their lizard brains see exciting things, and they go, good, bye. Not just the Red Bull, but that brand of clothing, that lifestyle. We can buy into that stuff, and the marketing works for us to do that. So in order for us to get a sense of why there's all this pressure from marketing, pressure from Red Bull, pressure from Fox Motorsports, Mopar, RockShox, like all these branded things that we see in decals on people's trucks, right down to the bumper sticker that says, if you can read this, flip my Jeep over, The reason that any of this is a thing is because recreation, we are thinking about as foresters, as recreation managers, as therapeutic recreation professionals in the rec program across campus and so forth. We are trained to think about this, the setting, the forest recreation site. Camel's Hump, Garden of the Gods, around that, Shawnee National Forest, around that, Southern Illinois region, and so forth. What's the setting? What's going on? What's the context? What's the ecosystem present? What are the component rare, threatened, and endangered species? What's the soil type? What's the precip pattern annually? How is it changing with climate change? We're pretty good at that part of it. What a lot of us as foresters miss is both sides of the process bookending that sense of how that setting is valued and used and impacted as a result of that use, positively or negatively impacted. So if we want to get into why the setting is used the way it is, why it's impacted the way it is, we need to take a look at inside the brain of this strange wildlife species we call the human forest recreationist. What are their motivations? Motivation is from the root for incepting, people to move, to do. And how do they want to do that? How would they prefer to be doing that? Okay? Think about your last fishing trip, or your last hiking trip, or whatever. How many of us would prefer not to be slogging with wet foot soles, like boots filled with mud, as you're walking along a trail? Show of hands. Yeah, me too. I've walked thousands of miles of trails, and I still don't like walking through the middle of the trail. So we get ourselves into this situation of the setting gets modified by us according to our preference for not having muddy feet on our fresh pair of Nikes. That drip becomes literal mud drip. We're walking along the trail, and we've got this muddy section here. Usually the muddy section's a little bit wider because as we're walking down the trail, oh, I see this. Where do I go? Around it, exactly. I walk right on that edge. And then I hope, low-key, whether or not you're thinking about this, this is basically an inescapable part of it. If you're not hiking solo, some little part of your lizard hindbrain, which is constantly keeping track of your perceived relationships with your peers, what do they think about what you're doing? You're hoping for that, oh man, you really threaded the needle around that noise, as Key and Peele would say. Because that's positive feedback from a peer or an aspirational peer that's with you on this hike. And it's like, okay, they saw what I did and they evaluated it positively and gave me positive feedback. Brain now flooded with the same neurochemicals you get from a hit of cocaine. Okay, and you continue on your way. But what happened to the setting, to the site? This spot is now muddy too. This is called trail braiding. And what happens is we widen it here, and then the next person goes around that and widens it out to there. And maybe it's 10 people walking on the edge that makes it go. Maybe it's 1,000 people in certain soil types that extends it this 6 inches to the side and widens it out. Maybe it's one person. Or maybe it's less than one person in certain kinds of soil types, poor consolidation soils, like very sandy loams and so forth. Poor soil particle adhesion, particles don't stick together very well. One person passing through here erodes and modifies, so to speak, that spot right there, but it continues sideways out past that person's track. This is called dune recession, when the incision, the footstep, cuts through the sand dune, and the sand dunes retreat both directions away from that, radiating outwards. So a single pass can destroy an entire dune for hundreds of yards in both directions. As crazy as that is, that's kind of how it works. But you and I, we're not thinking about that. We're thinking about getting over that dune to the beach, okay? And so we gotta wrestle with, as forest recreation managers, people's motivations. Why are they here in the first place? And how well does the setting that we are managing and working our butts off to do, how does that accommodate the activities that grow out of that motivation? And particularly style that activity according to preference. Okay. I prefer, when I'm going for a 1 to 2 hour hike, not to have to leave a big creamy shit on the side of the trail. So my preference imposes a need for the Forest Service to have a functional bathroom at the trailhead. Does that make sense? So now as a forester, I'm on the hook for plunging toilets because somebody tried to flush too many tampons in like those little plastic fiber wet wipes? Shoot. Okay. Now I'm basically running a city. and this is important, it's okay if people with female reproductive systems need to use tampons. I need to, as the forester, regardless of my feelings on the subject, or how grossed out or not I am about that, like, that's a legit motivation to have to use the bathroom, okay? So that imposes requirements on the settings that we're trying to mark for timber and keep clean for wildlife, high quality habitat, and for watershed and so forth. So we end up with these big, fancy, basically urban city setting scale water treatment facilities, septic fields. In some places they are helicoptering trash out load by load, because that's the only way you can get people's food wrappers out of some of these more remote environments, and people aren't going to stop eating food in wrappers when they are backpacking. And even if you tell 100% of your backpackers, hey, you need to pack out everything you bring in, we're just going to get a couple of mouth-breathing slobs. They're going to leave those little plastic and mylar food wrappers behind, and we got to deal with that. That setting modification leads to deer eating those, getting a foil ball in their stomach, getting a gut obstruction, and starving to death while their stomachs are distended with big balls of plastic wrap. This is a real thing that we got to deal with these days, okay? So, all that to say, it's pretty primitive and ineffective to just be a forester just looking at trees. Even just a sophisticated ecosystem process and function understanding of a place, the moment we introduce humans, and humans have covered pretty much every square inch of the dry side of this planet already, it's naive to cut ourselves off from understanding the motivations and preferences of people. And all of this downstream, of course, gets to the recreation experience. So by combining the activity on site relative to the preferences and needs of people, with the setting, with the group dynamics of everybody sort of around the recreationist or the recreation group that we're concerned with, once we have all those pieces to the puzzle, now we can really get some pretty sophisticated stuff. So organizations like the National Park Service, they do a ton of human research, as well as being leaders around the world on ecosystem management, ecosystem rehab, restoration ecology type stuff, the physical side of forestry. These days they're starting to get pretty sophisticated on understanding and tracking and working with, and in a healthy and appropriate way, kind of steering with motivation and preference taken into account. All right, so let's take a quick look at Carts of Darkness. Let's get this going here. It'll be a second while we get this all together. We'll end our show briefly. So we're gonna watch a strange little, or parts of a strange little documentary called Carts of Darkness, which is about an emergent form of recreation. We would say it's more on the urban side than not. It's 59 minutes long. You can watch the whole thing at home if you wish. We're just gonna get some highlights. But this is a thing. It is certainly.
I need something. I crave speed in my life. I need to bomb a steep hill, escape an avalanche. Once upon a time.
All right, so we start off with motivation and preference. What does this person need or want?
Drugs or a snowboard.
Okay, when they were saying speed, they were talking about velocity, not like amphetamines. Yeah, good guess.
Very good guess, considering what the eyes are going.
I like the cut of your jibs, sailor. All right. But what else? Let's play this again. We're 27 seconds in. We're already having to rethink our whole lives here. A real Top Gun quote to start this thing off. I feel the need for speed. Something, something, turn and burn. Okay.
I need something. I crave speed in my life. I need to bomb a steep hill, escape an avalanche. Once upon a time, I made snowboard films, and my life was pure adrenaline. I thought it would last forever. Now, the mountains that surround me are nothing but beautiful obstacles. I'm living in a world of flat sidewalks and power doorways, and haven't made a film in 10 years.
Okay, so, dramatic intro aside, there's some fundamental motivations getting expressed here. This person has a need for something more than flat sidewalks and power doors. Do you ever get the sense that we're kind of maybe a little bit neutered in our souls by having all the rough edges of existence kind of knocked off in our comfortable suburban lives? Many people, we would now say, lead lives of quiet desperation. Just following that life script of grow up, go to school, get that piece of paper, get a job, retire, die of a heart attack, leave mountains of medical debt to your heirs.
American dream.
But there are a lot of people, most people, who have a sense of, okay, so yeah, I may need to do some things like work in America's capitalist society and so forth, but that's not what I'm really here for. That's not what I'm made for. That's not what I need. We are more than places to, or we need more than places to go to the grocery store to get food. And yet, there's also this weird sense, he was saying, okay, I used to make, not only like do snowboarding, which is pretty exciting forest and outdoor rec, but make films about it. So when we were talking on Tuesday, remember how we had that hierarchy of like low-grade amusement and crime and delinquency, and then passive participation, active participation, like actually doing the snowboarding, and then creativity up above that, inventing new kinds of snowboarding or new styles, inventing new gear to make snowboarding safer or faster or farther back in that pow pow nar nar in the backcountry. That means fresh powder in bro dude speak. Okay. But he's saying, wait a minute, 10 years ago, I stopped making snowboarding films, and now these beautiful mountains that I used to go snowboarding in, they're nothing but obstacles. There's this sense of progression of, man, I used to go snowboarding all the time, but now that's not even enough. I gotta get my fix some other way. My need for speed. And other folks experience catastrophic injuries, and for whatever reason, maybe they take a 40-pound hook to the leg at an industrial job site, or maybe they just have a pretty heinous snowboard wipeout, and if they survive that, then they're told by their doctors, look, if you ever take another fall snowboarding again, it's gonna pull the warm jello consistency of your brain tissue apart in a bad way, and you're gonna be here, but not really here, and eating through a tube the rest of your life until they decide to unplug you. Okay? So there's a sense of either progression and needing more or better or something more specific and higher quality, or a sense of loss from, of isolation from. So just the sense of like 5-minute chat about motivation, okay? Because it doesn't matter if you even have high quality snowboarding mountain like downhill runs if the motivation doesn't match that setting. Does that make sense? Okay, this is a huge, huge thing. What's the demand of hundreds of millions of people versus what the setting can supply? All right, moving on. Let's skip ahead here.
Recently, I discovered a group of outsiders living in my neighborhood making these hills their own.
Breaking the law, breaking the law.
Gets the bruises.
Throw it sideways, put a little stank on the line you take, man. Slide out. Oh man, this gets stuff.
Actually made more money collecting bottles every day than I do at my job right now.
It's a bunch of
It
Canadian
makes you look
dudes
like a bum.
stealing,
Everybody gets to know you as a
borrowing
bum, and no one-
grocery carts,
if they keep seeing you in North
and
Vancouver,
going down
they'll
steep
hire you.
slopes. Now, I understand that we don't have a lot of steep slopes in southern Illinois,
1150.
but
That's not bad.
in a lot of places in Canada, like the Canadian Rockies,
North
for example,
Vancouver is a wealthy area. Even the blue boxes here are a gold mine. Although
So
I
there's
love
a
this
sense
neighborhood
of
and have lived here for years, I
creativity,
still don't feel like I belong
of
here.
in kind of a guerrilla or bootleg AF way, as we would say. People are finding satisfaction for their motivation, that need for speed, that sense of adventure, that sense of challenge and personal progression. Like the first time I stole a grocery cart and just rode it down some really steep hills. Maybe you skid out or you stop your advance with a truck or something like that, and it doesn't go so well. But by the 10th time and your 8th trip to the emergency room, you're getting pretty good at this stuff, right? So that motivation is going to be satisfied. Somebody is going to do something to address that perceived need of just getting your pulse up, right? As goofy as maybe this seems, or maybe as sensible as this seems, if you've ever done any go-kart racing. Let's see here. Maybe this kind of makes sense.
About 15 years ago, I decided to leave
All
my
right.
wife and
So
my
this
family,
is a skating pump track.
and I didn't feel, like
Bendy halfway.
doing a regular job anymore. I just felt like doing art, painting, writing poetry, and being relatively independent from the workforce. I didn't immediately want to collect cans or bottles. It started really because I had to feed myself.
I down the hills, and you always get cheerful after.
So part of the motive in this case is, again, choosing a different lifestyle and kind of rejecting the 9 to 5 commute back and forth and, work in an office cubicle kind of a way. A lot of us, I think, resonate with that to varying degrees. Now, as a professor, I don't work in a cubicle, and I haven't worked in a cubicle for a while. But I did some time. It feels like going to prison. I went away, and it changes
Take it
you, man.
easy, Johnny Cash.
Yeah, but that's a thing. There's this sense of you can always make more money one way or another, whether it's getting bottle deposits back and stuff like that, or grinding it out in the 95 cubicle farm. But the motivation isn't really there. A lot of folks who work in software development these days, they go work for one of the big five, the FANG, Facebook, now Meta, or Google or Apple or whatever. They'll go work and make stupid FU, as they call it, amounts of money, and then just unplug from working once they have enough. Make a couple $100,000 a year and do your thing. In forestry, it's a little bit different, right? We're not mostly making $250,000 a year, but we don't have to put up with a lot of that corporate office culture, BS kind of a stuff. And so the calculus is different for us. But for most people whose best understanding of how to sort of make it from one end to the other without starving to death is that cubicle farm, we see a lot of folks kind of leaking out of that. Their motivation is to access something more real, something more immediate, something more exciting than spending their entire lives in the cubicle farm and so forth. Okay? So, as a forester, in particular a forest recreation management professional, we got to understand this. Yeah, this is kind of goofy. Racing grocery carts down hills without any brakes, knuckle tats, no brakes, 8 letters, no brakes. That's the best way a bunch of people, to the extent that it's a subculture, and there's a documentary about it now. This is a thing, right? It's not just one random person here or there. Now, expand this out beyond grocery carts to all of the other ways that we can move fast, or experience beautiful places like forests, or connect with other motivations like old dead white guy John Muir used to suggest that we need places to play in, like national forests, national parks, etc. And we need places to pray in. And for him, that was national forests, national parks, Yosemite Valley, and so forth. Like, these are more than just places to move fast and have fun. It's part of the spiritual landscape. It's that we are more than just these sort of vaguely pink on the inside meat sacks that are electrically actuated, and we sort of grow and get old and die and reproduce in no particular order. We are spiritual beings on a physical short-term journey, okay? Now, we're not going to get much more into the spiritual side of stuff. This is a recreation management class, but the sense of motivations being more than just moving fast, but also things like, man, I need to feel small in a big place, like the Grand Canyon. I need to feel temporary in an eternal place, like Yosemite Valley. As a mortal, I need to think about or contemplate what else is out there. Beyond the veil, right? We have, 60, 80 years, something like that? And then a whole lot of time otherwise. Do we go somewhere? Parks and forests are a place traditionally and currently where people go to have space away from your notifications and the dopaminergic endless scroll of TikTok and stuff like that is manipulating you into watching ads and stuff. Parks and forests provide space and quiet to hear those sorts of things, okay? To think about meaningfully in some level what's going on. All right, so if you want to watch any more of Cards of Darkness, we'll put the PowerPoint up on the course website here soon enough, and you can pull up the URL from there. But we're going to move on. Let's see. Right. And we'll finish up with our last 10 minutes here, moving on from there. All right? So, with this sense, armed now with this idea that, okay, the human wildlife species brings weird stuff that most other species don't, like motivation and preference into how we use our habitats for things like recreation, which is, if you want to think about it, it's kind of the extra habitat usage layer that it's the one wildlife habitat usage type that other wildlife species don't. We are unique in this way, doing things for pleasure, doing things for similar motivations like spiritual contemplation, connection with the sublime, is what some people will phrase it as when you talk about getting up and watching the sunrise and the fluid flow of clouds seeded by individual trees there in Yosemite Valley. Like, you have some time to think about important stuff, maybe where you don't have time or the focus to, while you're getting constantly bombarded by notifications and emails from professors, because emails are old and out of date, and that's what professors thrive on, and so forth, okay? So with that understanding of motivations and how we use habitats differently than other kinds of wildlife species, let's talk about how we tend to think about nature, all right? And this guy, Bruce Hall, is a researcher out of Virginia Tech and wrote a book about different, essentially, definitions of the word nature. So we're going to go through just a couple of those with specific reference to how humans are thinking about and using nature differently than other wildlife species. So we think about nature as where people are not. We would call that low population density from a wildlife population perspective. All right? It is a wild place where non-human material and energy cycling processes, meaning not over-the-road trucking, not freight shipping on or cargo shipping on barges and stuff like that. Things happen in natural spaces, in nature, when the rain delivers it there. or erosion takes it out of that ecosystem. Does that make sense? Question?
Your she has one saying that you need like areas that are like non-accessible to us, like regular folk.
Yeah.
To like the average like commuter bomber, not taking guy out goes out in the wilderness.
Right.
That's
So the thing is, this is a huge motivation to go where other people aren't. But do you see the weird contradiction, the irony of a black fly in your Chardonnay? Of you want to go where other people aren't, so you go where all the other people who are going where other people aren't. Like Yosemite Valley. And 20 to 25,000 of your best friends are crowded in this narrow, long valley with you. So when you have that many people in a narrow valley, everybody's pushed together. And now, people are not where other people aren't, to use the double negative, okay? Other versions or other conceptions of nature that have a real important push on how people are going fishing, how people are going hang gliding, how people are going rock climbing and so forth, is nature as where people aren't. So solitude, nature as mother, in traditional cultures, or provider. All heard the term Mother Earth, right? Okay. We go to nature to get things. Mother Nature as a mother, wild as dangerous, okay? Survivor Man, Bear Grylls, etc., etc. Okay? Nature is a challenge to be overcome. For some people, it is a challenge to be tamed and civilized and hewing life and peaceful, safe existence out of. And for others, it is let's throw ourselves into the backcountry of Alaska with our knife and one match, maybe wearing a sock, one sock, and see what happens. Okay? Survivalism, bushcraft, and so forth. All of these things, you and I, as park rangers, this is what people want us to be on the hook to manage and provide. There's a subtle difference there. It may not be how we manage nature for to provide these benefits. Often solitude, definitely. But some of these others, okay, that's tricky. So here is a natural scene as well. Some people would see something like this and think, this means solitude. Good. I want to go to a beach where nobody else is, and I'm going to do what I want to do. Maybe I'll strip off all my clothes and go running, whooping into the water. Or maybe I'll just grill on the beach. Or maybe I'll lay out and work on my tan. And other people see that same wild space, that same natural space as not solitude, but desolate, meaning empty in a bad or negative way of people. You hear the same root word, but the opposite meaning. Solitude is a good thing. Desolate is a weird, creepy, bad thing. Okay? So, this gets tricky. Like, this is the same scene, and people are seeing it oppositely. So what do you do with that as a forcer? How do you make that beach okay for as many people as you can? All right? Other folks are thinking of nature as, honestly, kind of a pain in the ass. Like, oh, this is such bullshit. I don't have any T-Mobile reception on this part of the Shawnee. I'm gonna write a letter to somebody. You know? Like, nature exists at our convenience for nice drives, and it's just something to get through because there's something interesting on the other side. A lot of people think of natural spaces, the forested areas that you're going to be managing, along those lines. It's just something to just sort of knock all the hard edges off of and get rid of. Okay? And others are looking for that adventure. This is called a Tyrolean traverse. That is certainly one way to cross a raging body of whitewater. Pretty gnarly, huh? And some people are like, oh man, my tax dollars went into that bridge. Oh, okay, well, we still gotta get groceries, so let's get across this thing. Other folks are like, yeah, let's do this. Who cares about the bridge? Like, we were gonna fix it, and then we were like, but we could zip line a car. Just hear me out. We could zip line a car, and it would be even faster than driving across. Yeah, you have to, like, get out of the car, probably. But this is an opportunity for some, and it's a real hassle for others. And we've got people legit on both sides of that fence, and neither one of them is wrong. Does that make sense? You're allowed to have whatever preferences you want. You're allowed to have whatever motivations you want. But our setting can't keep up with some of the activities that show up out of certain motivations, out of certain sets of preferences, out of certain skill levels, and so on and so forth. Okay? Cool. Let me pause it right there. So it's a forced perspective. It actually stops short of the tree, but
You even got out before they would moved it across. How would they get the car on the other side? Very careful.
Tyrolean traverse. You go across the same way. Yeah.
I feel like it was safe.
So a very similar technique called highlining and grip hoisting is used to move boulders into place when you're doing trail work. You can move a 5 or 10 ton boulder exactly the same way as this, 1 to 10 ton vehicle, and you just have a second steel cable that releases the claw attachment there. This is not a super high resolution thing, but at the beginning, you can see right there, the line going to the side. That's somebody either controlling the rate, not in this case, or controlling the release of the grip hoist to do that, okay? So anyway, we talk more about grip hoist and stuff like that in trail building classes and park management, so not a conversation for today. But just as you're packing up, we'll just remind everybody I'm starting to get some extra credit work in from folks as emails. Contact Green Earth, contact Shawnee National Forest. Volunteering on the Shawnee is extra credit for this class and is like 1.5 feet in the door if you want to work on the Shawnee in the summer or eventually get hired on the Shawnee as a full-time permanent like a couple of years down the road. Volunteering is often how it gets started. So if you're not sure what you're doing this summer, think about it, all right? If you are sure what you're doing this summer, go volunteer anyway. This counts like work experience in the federal system, weirdly enough, okay? Cool. With that, some photos of people building trails with me here in Carbondale at Green Earth sites. You too could be rolling logs. What fun. What motivation. Oh my goodness. All right, we're done. Get out of here. Have a good weekend. We'll see you on Tuesday. We're going to start moving out of this boring definition stuff. And hopefully the weather warms up so we can get outside.